Alright, working on a 2015 Dodge Grand Caravan here. We're just going to make this quick and simple. It's got a check engine light on, and it's got the, hopefully this will focus in for you, P0128 thermostat rationality. And normally what that is the car does not warm up fast enough for it. And 9 times out of 10, or almost 10 times out of 10, it just needs a thermostat. This car has a little over 100,000 miles on it. It's the original thermostat, I'm sure. It has no other cooling problems. I check. You always want to check your coolant level, because if your coolant level's low, that could cause this code. The coolant level on this one is fine. And there's no other cooling issues or heating issues that I know of. She said the light just came on recently, and she got it scanned at AutoZone. They came back with that code, so she brought it to me. So anyway, I'm not going to go. You could have a bad temperature sensor or something like that. We're not going to go over all that in this video. Like I said, this car is 2015. And it's got over 100,000 miles on it, so we're going to go ahead and change the thermostat and not go too crazy on it, trying to diagnose it. You could start it up and watch your scan tool if you have one that's capable for live data, and see how it's warming up, if it matches the temperature in the car as far as the gauge in there and all that. But in my experience, it's almost always a thermostat. So we're going to go ahead and change it. It's not too hard on these. On these, you can get a thermostat. You get the thermostat and the housing. I always recommend just getting the housing. It's only a few dollars more, and it comes with the housing, the thermostat, the seal, everything you need just to put it in and be done with it. So on this, I'm not going to drain the fluid. On these cars, my experience is the 3.6, when you drain the fluid, it's kind of hard to get the air bubbles out of it unless you have you know, a way to force the fluid in there. Sorry about that. When the train comes by, my dog likes to howl. So if you have one of these, makes it a little bit easier to get the air bubbles out of these type of systems. Normally, if you're just changing the thermostat, you're not draining the entire system out. These aren't too bad. Just turn the heater on and let it run, and they'll burp themselves out. But I've come to, from experience, if you drain, like pull a radiator out of one of these, or do oil cooler or something like that, where you have to do, you know, almost a full drain. These sometimes can be a bear to get the air bubbles out, and it's just easier to use one of these. Since I'm not draining the entire system, probably won't need that, but I just want to mention that in case you're doing more work. So anyway, first thing I'll do is get that hose clamp loose on there. I already got a pan under there to catch anything, and we'll go ahead and take that hose clamp off. It's just a regular standard you know, compression clamp. We'll pull that off, and then it's just got two 10mm bolts to take the thermostat off. So I'll get you closer in there, and then we'll. Alright, just in case you didn't know, the thermostat on these engines, on the Grand Caravans, it's on the passenger side, and all you're doing is just filing your upper radiator hose down to where it connects, and you'll see down in here on the front of the engine, on the front head, you have the housing. There's a clamp there for the upper radiator hose. Put a pan under there and take that clamp off, and hopefully you can see it. It's right there. So get whatever you have. I actually have a remote clamp remover that I'll probably use on this, just because it's easier that way. I'll show you that, but you should be able to get, you know, a nice pair of pliers or something down there. Alright, so I have the clamp removed, and I just use this remote. It's for removing clamps like that. It's got a cable with a little attachment on it, and you don't have to get down in there. It makes it a little bit easier, especially on like this one where it's kind of an awkward spot. I'm sure if you had a good pair of pliers, a bigger pair, you could get in there and get it done. I just don't want to remove a bunch of stuff to do it. So now all I gotta do is just push that hose off. I'll get a big screwdriver and kind of pry that off a little bit, and then over down to is the 10mm bolts that hold it on. Alright, I went ahead and pulled the thermostat housing off. You have two 10mm bolts that hold it on. I just use a 1/4 inch ratchet and a small extension. It's probably the easiest thing to get in there. And both the bolts are the same size, same length, so it's not a big deal which way they go back. And you'll pull this housing off, and my gasket stayed on the head, so you want to make sure you pull your gasket off. You don't want to double gasket it. You want to check your surface anyway, make sure it's clean and ready for the new one to go on either way, but you don't want to keep your old gasket on there. So this is the old housing here, and I don't really see anything. I don't see anything big on it that would cause a problem, but like I said, it's not usually pretty obvious. Now, if you're just going to change the thermostat, you can push these in. These push in, and then you rotate them out. That's how you change them. But since we got the whole housing, we're not going to do that. So make sure your head is clean and everything is nice and clean and ready for the new seal. And then once it's ready, go ahead and put the new one in. So I'm going to go ahead and check the surface on it, and then we'll... Alright, I just want to go over this real quick. I'm not sponsored by this or anything. I don't even know who makes these tools. I bought this as a kit a long time ago. This comes with several different clamps for removing hose clamps. This is the remote one that I use probably the most. You can see it's got a cable, and this just goes down onto the hose clamp, and you can obviously close it and open it. What's nice about it is it has a lock on it, so once you get it opened up to where you can move it back to take the hose off, this stays on there until you're ready to put it back on. Then you just slide the hose back on and release this lock lever, and it'll release that clamp right where you want it. So like I said, I'm not sponsored by a tool company or anything. I use these quite a bit doing hose clamps, and they do come in handy. Now on this one, it's fairly easy to get to, but it's still down in there and it's kind of tight. There's a bunch of stuff in the way. So with this thing, it took me 30 seconds. Take that clamp on and off, and if you don't have something like this, it may take you a little more time. So just something to think about. Maybe pick one of the, if you're going to pick up any of them, this is the one I use the most, the remote one. I don't know if they sell them. I bought it as a kit. There's probably 5 or 6 of them in there, different ones, different angles and stuff, but this is the one I use the most out of the kit. So if you do a little bit of work on your side or on your own or whatever, and you deal with these hose clamps a lot, this is the one to get. So anyway, I'll take you in closer. I got it all back together. Sorry I can't really show you. It's so tight in there, there's not really any room to get anything in there, but I'll show you where it's at. I put the 2 bolts back in and got the hose back on and the clamp back to about where it was at. So I'm going to go ahead and fill the system up. Before I do that, I'll show you that and tell you the torque spec, and then we'll move on. Alright, so here's the housing right here. You can see, here's your air filter and your power steering reservoir and all that, and then right here is the housing. Now, the manual says to take all this stuff off. I don't do that. I can get in there. You can reach in there. Here's the clamp for the hose. This is your housing, and there's the top bolt right there, and then there's one underneath it, kind of over this way. Those are both 10 millimeter. When you put it back together, make sure everything's clean, the surface is clean, the old gas is off. It's 21 foot-pounds if you want to torque them. It's plastic, so don't go crazy if you don't have a torque wrench. Just get them nice and snug, and then you're pretty much done. It's really all there is to it. So I'm going to go ahead and use the vacuum or the air pressurized system to fill this system up. If you don't have that, you can, what I would do, I mean, this is the way the factory wants you to do it, and really with these engines, it's the easiest way, I think. If you don't have that, I would fill it up, turn the heat on, let it idle, and just keep filling it till it's done. Take it out for a little bit, come back and double check it. To me, these engines have a tendency to get air pockets in them, and sometimes they're pretty hard to get out. So I'm going to go ahead and just use the tools I have available to me, and use a pressure bleeder and put the fluid back in that way. Again, if you don't have that, then you're going to have to go the old school route. And hopefully with, not completely draining the system, it'll be easier for you. I've had problems with these and the Hemis and stuff for whatever reason. Sometimes I'm able to do it without this system, no problem, and then other times it's just a big pain in the butt. So anyway, that's what I would do if you have that code. That's where I would start. First, make sure your cooling system's in operating order. nothing's leaking, your fans are coming on, everything's working right. Once you get past all that, the next logical step is to change the thermostat. And I would just get the housing with it, but that's your personal preference. And then you should be good to go after you fill it back up. Alright, I figured I'd go over this real quick since I got the tools out, and I realize most people aren't going to have this, but this is what we would do. This is how Chrysler recommends doing refilling the system, and this is how I do a lot of these Chryslers. So you just get your adapter here, plug your hose into your machine here, and then this outlet goes down to your coolant, and then this goes to your air source. And the reason why this is so effective, you want to do this when the engine's cool, and the reason why this is so effective is it pushes the air through, or it pushes the coolant through there and pushes out all the air pockets. So and what it does is when you start it, usually be around 10 or 15 on the gauge here, and you run the air, open the valves up and run the air till it's about 0. And when it's at 0, that means you're basically full. Of course, you want to check it. If it still looks like it's low, then hook it back up and redo it. But usually on the first try, it does it. And with these newer cars, it's easier. I don't use this a lot, but certain cars, for whatever reason, I have more trouble getting air out of the system. And this is pretty much a foolproof way of doing it. And so I don't know if you do quite a bit of repairs on cars, especially the newer ones, even if it's your own cars and you do a lot of maintenance and stuff, this might be a decent investment for you. Like I said, I'm not trying to push tools or anything, but this is the stuff that I use in my everyday deal here at the garage. So yeah, this is actually the correct way Chrysler tells you to refill the system. Like I said, you can do it the old school way also. I've had luck doing it both ways, but for whatever reason, I don't like to repeat myself, but for whatever reason I have had issues with these particular engines and getting air pockets in there. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and disconnect all this, make sure it's full, and then we'll clear the code and take it for a drive. But that's pretty much it for this video. Thanks for watching. Hopefully we'll see you down the road, and as always, God bless.